there. When I think of it, we were not very old and very big, but we were brave.
Yeah, I guess you were.
We were brave. Living on the farm.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there were quite a few of us. There were 5 of us, all small and young enough to be standing around the stovepipes in the morning to get warm. And what we used to do, because the stovepipes came up, the stove was downstairs, 2 big stoves, one a cook stove and one a heating stove. And the pipes came up through the floor and went across to the chimney upstairs as well as downstairs. So in the morning, of course, we grabbed all our clothes as we rolled out from underneath a pile of quilts. And we would all take our clothes out around the stovepipes. Now, if you can picture at least 4 of us, Elmer was the youngest, and he used to wait in case we trampled him to death around that location. So we were all there with our clothes, getting dressed, and Mother is yelling downstairs, the breakfast is ready, and the school bus will be here soon, etc., etc. She had a song that she used to sing every morning like that to try to get us to hurry up to get downstairs and have breakfast, where we would have a nice hot porridge and toast, lots and lots and lots of food. Living on the farm, there was always lots of food. Actually, there was always lots of food, and most often there were other people there at night to help us eat it. My dad used to pick these people up all over the place. And I remember one Sunday morning, coming down the road was this big thing that looked like a bear. And us kids saw it first. And he finally got to the front door, and it was a man that he had met out in the village he was hungry. So however he came 2.5 miles back to the farm to eat. But my mother was quite sure that she didn't want to add him to the family.
So who are the 3 people here?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
this, yes, I
Yeah.
know.
So who is that?
I have a big one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cute. Look at the pants, eh?
Yeah. So who is this?
Yeah, my hair. Yeah.
Is that you?
Yeah.
And who are these?
Elmer and
Dorothy. Okay.
Elmer and Dorothy. We were picking berries.
I thought so, because you've got your little pails.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what about this
we
one?
were picking berries.
I thought so. So
Good.
who is this?
Yeah, that's Bun. That's Bun.
Yeah, he looks the same as he always did.
I don't know who this would be.
Yeah, I
Probably
don't know either.
Basil.
Oh, maybe. Because, yeah, it doesn't look like Elmer or Fred.
I would.
Looks too old, to be Fred.
Maybe Elmer.
Or Fred? Would it be Uncle Fred?
Okay.
Would it be Fred?
Yeah, probably more apt. Well, yeah, probably Fred.
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
Fred. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then,
This is Dorothy.
okay.
This is me. This is
And that's Dorothy. And that would
This
be
is
Georgie?
Georgie, me,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Well, no, now this is Bun. This is Elmer.
Well, Elmer's younger. But he doesn't look very young.
No, but that's just where he's sitting, I think,
okay,
you know.
could be.
See, Bun's sitting back behind him.
Yeah.
You can see the difference
Oh,
right
okay, could
behind
be.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, this would be Bun
Yeah.
and Georgie. And that would be Elmer. No, that would be
No.
Elmer. That must be Basil. I don't know who that would be.
Yeah.
Somebody.
Yeah, no,
But this is Bun,
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, he looks the same as
And
he
this
always
is
did.
Georgie.
Yeah. And it must be you and Dorothy.
This is me.
Yeah, and
This
then
is
Dorothy. Yeah. School was
And
over half
we
a mile.
walked.
And you walked, okay, yeah.
Except in the winter time, when it was a lot of snow or whatever, then
Yeah.
my dad used to hitch up the horse.
Okay.
And of course that was fun because the sleigh wasn't all that big, but we picked up kids.
Oh, yeah. So it was like Grandpa's bus.
See, when we had when I was first going to school, we had the schoolhouse.
Yeah.
That a teacher used to be hired to come in from somewhere.
Yeah.
And there were everybody in one room.
Yes.
And that went outside toilet.
Yeah.
a place to hang your coat in the cloakroom and
Yeah.
an outside toilet. Just one.
Yeah.
With 2 seats. Yeah. So that went on until I was in grade 6.
Yeah.
In grade 6, then they opened the consolidated school, as
Yeah.
they called it. And then we had buses come to pick us up to go to Granville.
Okay. Oh, that'd be a little hike. Yeah. Yes.
But we got electricity fairly early. But it was when I was working
Yeah.
and working
Yeah.
by the time they got that. It was fine.
Because you just use lanterns and
Oh, it was fine.
Yeah.
We had, because we had a large house,
yeah.
and we had the summer
Kitchen.
the big, as you remember,
Yeah.
big house with
Yeah.
the
Yes.
archway here.
Yeah.
And they had a big round heater stove
Yes.
on one side
So it was
over
good.
by the kitchen
Yeah.
area. And then we, of course, we had the outside kitchen,
Yeah.
and it always had a fire on
Going,
in
yeah.
there too, sort
Yeah.
of thing, in the winter time when
Yeah.
there's anything going on. And no, I can't ever remember being cold.
No, but it's just with the lights and everything, you know?
Yeah.
So you'd have to use lanterns.
Yeah, mind you, we had we used to call them buffaloes, but they were big quilts, eh?
Yeah.
And often there'd be 3 of us in bed anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it was we were always. I can't ever remember being cold in a big farmhouse like that. The parlor. I do remember one thing though. The parlor was closed in the winter
Yeah.
time. And I remember having done something, I don't know, probably wasn't all that bad if you can think of one time that you were
Yeah.
chastised.
Yeah.
But I remember Mother putting me in the parlor and closing the door. And I can remember it. You know, I think of this, I used to always think of
Yeah.
this and be careful with my kids. you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
She put me in there to and closed the door for
You had a
something
time
like
out.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was so insulted. So really, imagine doing
Yeah.
that. Our jobs.
Yeah.
Dorothy, she never went outside.
Yeah. Well,
Dorothy was the pet. So what her job was to put the plates and the cups on the table in the morning, whereas the rest of us were out there. I had 4 cows that I milked.
Okay.
I learned to milk on Annie. She was
Okay.
a red and white cow. A very nice cow. Oh, I used to talk to her right away and say, please don't kick me.
Yeah.
Because very often these cows would lift the foot and the pail would upset
Yeah.
and go all over the place. But no, I used to talk to her a little bit and we got along very well. So I milked Annie and Buki every morning. And then, of course, we had to take them down to the pasture.
Yeah.
So Fred and I used to take them down the road to the pasture. And we used to go back to what we called the buckwheat pasture. And it took us through a little cow path away through the bush, which was about half a mile.
Oh yeah.
And it was very interesting because we saw lots of wild animals through there. When I think of it, we were not very old and very big, but we were brave.
Yeah. I guess you were.
We were brave. See, I was born in 27,
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So that went on and on. Like this wasn't just happening during the war years, which is
Or the Depression. Yeah. The Depression, yeah.
At that time, mind you. See, these people used to get off the train. They would hike their way on the train, and we
Yeah.
lived about a half a mile from the tracks.
Okay.
And I can remember so many times. We had a back door, a back kitchen and a back door
Yeah.
off the kitchen that my mother finally put a table out on the platform
Okay. Yeah.
because we used to call them tramps,
Yeah.
but they shouldn't have been called tramps. They were just people looking
For work.
places to stay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were always, I remember us kids because we used to say, who's this, you know?
Yeah.
How many are here?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were always very harmless.
Yeah.
And yet we never liked to have them. But my dad was a passionate person that wanted to help everybody.
Yeah.
So he always had food there ready to feed them. He was an exceptionally generous, kind, super person with other people. I can remember my mother so many times because there was a farm on the other side of us that used to, my dad, because they didn't have enough farmland, my dad gave them a big field and a big piece of the bush. But for the cows to get there, they had to drive the cows across our farm. And I remember my mother saying many times, he'll give the farm away before I know it. And with little kids running around hearing that, you know. Oh, we used to always go to our dad and say,
Are you going to give the farm?
Very sick while he was in the war. Very sick. He came down with pneumonia. And I was taking a commercial course in Hawkesbury at that time. And the hospital wasn't too far from where the college was. And I used to go in and see him. Yeah, that killed him.
And he ended up with TB, I think,
Very young. Very young. He was in his late 20s, I suppose.
Because Jimmy and Kathy were, Jimmy and Heather were pretty young. They were just kids.
See, I was only 16. I was only 16, I was very young. He took pneumonia and he died. Oh, what a sad time that was. Left 2 little kids. That's when I went to live with Enid.
To help out,
So Enid they lived in the schoolhouse there. And when Alton died, then I went to live with Enid. I stayed living with Enid until I moved to Ottawa. Because she had Jimmy and Heather.
And then she got sick.
Jimmy was little. Jimmy was very well. He was born in January, so when Alton died the next November, so he was not quite a year old.
No, wow.
No, he wasn't quite a year old.
Why did you start Brownies in Metcalfe?
That's very simple, because I had Brownies in Ottawa at the Westboro United Church.
And there was none here.
And I had 30-some Brownies there. And when I moved out here, I had Explorers. And Explorers were associated with the United Church. And it was sort of, I wanted it to expand to include everyone, all the little girls in the area at that age. So therefore, I started Explorers. And I ended up with...
I started Brownies.
I ended up with 30 of them and 3 helpers.
I was wondering about that. How did you get the word out that you were starting Brownies?
Well, I started, Wendy, I started with Brownies. And it was Brownies because we started with Explorers from the church. And I switched it to Brownies. So it would take in everyone.
So a lot of the same kids. Okay.